So earlier this year, the Variety posted an article about Warner Brothers gaming studio, saying they're working on a Game of Thrones video game, very similar to like the Harry Potter's Hogwarts Legacy game that came out in 2023. And then later on in the year, news broke that a Game of Thrones video game is going to happen, and is going to take place around season 4 of the TV show. But that second one, Pacific, a lot of them have deleted their articles, and deleting articles could be a good thing and a bad thing. The bad is that the articles could have been false and had to be taken down, or the good news is that the articles were correct and had to be taken down because they were leaks. And the big leaks always get taken down, whether it's like leaked GTA 6 photos, leaked movies, or leaked shows, leaked nudes, or leaked games, or whatever. But either way, this Variety article is not only credible, but it's coming directly from the source, and the company of Warner Brothers. And Warner Brothers have already made Game of Thrones mobile games in the past, which even though they aren't really popular, they have made a crap ton of money because of microtransactions. So I thought I would see what's going on with this new Game of Thrones video game in the works, which is coming to PC and console. See where it's in development, the release date window, and just giving my overall thoughts and wish list for the game, because as some of you know, I am a full-on gamer with a Y. I absolutely love video games and penis, and as well as Game of Thrones. But one thing that really gets me excited with this Variety article, it mentions that Warner Brothers are quote-unquote punching above their weight class thanks to 4 IPs the company values at $1 billion a piece, goddamn, in the gaming world, and those being Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, DC, and Mortal Kombat. And this gets me really excited because all of those other franchises are huge in the gaming world. Hogwarts Legacy is literally the most successful game of 2023, selling over 24 million copies, goddamn again. And one of the reasons is because of its insane budget. And a successful Game of Thrones video game needs an insane budget, because we've had Game of Thrones video games in the past, and they really just missed the mark on a lot of things, and the budget was to blame for a lot of it.
He's one of ours, Cregan.
First Gorod deserts, and now one of our best veterans betrays his vows.
What?
I will leave immediately.
May the gods speed you.
May the old gods. You missed that. Incredible. Incredible. Honestly, I don't know why this didn't win Game of the Year.
So a Game of Thrones video games needs to be a AAA budget. And all the other games that the Warner Brothers have listed in that article with the Game of Thrones video game, I don't see this game being anywhere near the level of those like old weird ass Game of Thrones Telltale games or mobile games. And I definitely see this new Game of Thrones video game being on the scale of like the older Assassin's Creed games, or maybe even Skyrim. And I imagine Warner Brothers are taking inspiration from games like Skyrim, The Witcher, and those Middle Earth games, because I imagine this Game of Thrones video game is gonna look a lot more to those games rather than like Mario Kart 8 or some bullshit. But like I said, the main concern is obviously the budget and of course the engine. If you didn't know, there was a Game of Thrones fan-made Unreal Engine trailer by Teaser Play, and it's absolutely phenomenal how a Game of Thrones video game could look like.
What unites people? Armies? Gold? Flags? Stories? There's nothing in the world more powerful than a good story.
Again, that is a concept trailer, not $1 billion budget, and it looks that good. So imagine how great a Game of Thrones video game could look with the proper studio like Warner Brothers working on it. The Game of Thrones video games that we already have now don't even hold a candle to those fan-made trailers. And to be fair, these older Game of Thrones games were made by small studios, but they just weren't anywhere near the level of that concept trailer. But now let's talk about the release date. Now from the Variety article, the release date is at least 3 to 4 years. It says in the article, with the focus shifting from console and PC based games, with 3 to 4 year release schedules. That might make you a bit sad, but this article did come from January of 2024, and I'm making this video in September of 2024. The leaves are changing color here, so 9 months are already gone. But I imagine around the summer of 2026, if we're lucky, imagine we do get some sort of teaser trailer. A full trailer would probably be 2027, but a teaser trailer just to show off the world, I think 2026 would be a strong possibility. And the best part about this game is if it does come out in 2027 or 2028, it's most likely going to come out on the PlayStation 6 and the Xbox Series 720 Pro Cube or whatever the next Xbox is going to be called. So rest assured it's going to look much better than this.
Go.
Imp.
What did my sister expect you would learn?
Who will testify on your behalf?
She's using you, and will continue to do so, until you no longer prove useful.
I know exactly what I'm doing.
Oh, clearly. Which is why you're here, doing her bidding.
Now the gameplay and story is probably the most important part of the game. The story itself is very complicated and it's going to be really hard to nail. Like, let's say it's gonna take place after season 4 of Game of Thrones. Well, story-wise in the show, there's the battle at Hardhome, Stannis' battle with the Boltons, and that's essentially it for the big battles. And that worked for the show, or at least for the most part. But it worked for the show because Game of Thrones isn't about action, it's about the politics. It's about the Game of Thrones, you know, who would have guessed. And video games that take place during a medieval fantasy need combat. I mean, almost every game ever has some sort of combat, or like, besides like those hentai games I used to play when I was a teenager. But every game has some sort of challenging combat or like a puzzle to investigate for some fun. And even though the Game of Thrones TV show was at its best when everyone was scheming and talking, like the best moments of Game of Thrones were definitely like the insane high quality dialogue.
I am the king! I will punish you.
Any man who must say, I am the king, is no true king. I'll make sure you understand that when I've won your war for you.
My father won the real war. He killed Prince Rhaegar. He took the crown while you hid under Castle Rock.
The king is tired. See him to his chambers.
Come along.
I'm not tired.
We have so much to celebrate. A wedding to plan. You must rest.
High quality dialogue isn't what makes a video game a video game. Red Dead Redemption 2 has the highest quality dialogue I have ever seen, you will ever see in a video game as well. But that doesn't mean you can have entire missions outside of action, right? Most Red Dead missions have some sort of action to them. So imagine whether or not the game is gonna take place around season 4 or not, an entirely new story has to be made up. There has to be some sort of action or combat or puzzle solving in some sort of way. And luckily for us, I think they can easily do that. The world of Game of Thrones, especially the books, have so much depth to them. There's so much there where you can just start writing your own battle with. I'll give my answer to what I think is the best way to do this in a sec, but you can do this with so much. You can have a story where you play as Robb Stark after season 1, and you win 30 battles and you have to play all those battles and there's some political stuff going on around you, and all your family besides your mom and Jon are dead, from your perspective. Or you can play as Jon Snow from season 1 all the way to season 4, and have missions where you fight off the White Walkers and the Wildlings more often. You can have a bunch of battles near Castle Black, and then when Jon Snow gets captured like season 3, now he fights off the Night's Watch for Ygritte, like changing up the story like that. Or you can play as Renly and fight off Stannis and have a bunch of gay sex with Loras Tyrell. The possibilities are endless. And if you want to expand outside the main story, the author of the books, George R.R. Martin, he is pretty good at making worlds for video games. He played a huge role for the success of the video game Elden Ring, which won Game of the Year in 2022.
I've played some video games. I'm not a big video gamer. But the game is called The Elden Ring, and it's a sequel to a video game that came out a few years ago called Dark Souls, and it came out of Japan. My work on it was actually done years ago. These games, they're like movies. They take a long time to develop. Basically, they wanted a world created to set the game in. They wanted world building as a big factor in fantasy and science fiction. You're not only talking about the characters and the plot, but the setting is almost as important as everything else. Tolkien's Middle-earth, Robert E. Howard's Hyborian Age, the Foundation universe of Isaac Asimov. I worked up fairly detailed background for them.
Now this is where people might hate me, and understand why. I believe that if you're gonna make a Game of Thrones video game, the best way to do it is in Season 8. I know, Season 8 of Game of Thrones is diabolical anus trash that God forgot to smite down with all his power. But when I mean Season 8, I'm talking about Season 8 Episode 3, The Long Night. And I don't mean in the same way. I mean more as like the Night King, spoiler alert, the Night King, unlike the show, takes over Winterfell, and takes over essentially all of Westeros. And Jon, Daenerys, and Tyrion are defending it now, and they have to fight back against the Night King and take back Westeros. That would be so cool, at least to me. This would be very similar to like the Lord of the Rings video game, Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor. I haven't touched that game in like 10 years. I never actually played the game, I just watched a YouTuber do a walkthrough of it like 10 years ago. And one thing I remember from that video game is how scary it was. It truly felt like a survivor horror game. And the ogres, or orca or whatever they're called, they seemed genuinely scary with the dark bloody theme that game had. So can you imagine if Game of Thrones had something like that? Where instead of orcs, the White Walkers are highly skilled, and Jon Snow has to stealthily kill them each one by one, kinda like Assassin's Creed Stealth. And then once you have a big battle, we play as Daenerys on her dragon, fighting off burning piles of White Walkers, and slowly taking Westeros back city by city. Oh my god, even thinking about that sends chills down my balls, man. Like literally, I'm not even joking. And the Long Night could end with Jon and Daenerys ending the Night King. And that would be much better because on the show the Long Night ended like this. Maybe I'm reaching too much because my ass just wants to do a redo of the last seasons. But one thing that I think is really important to mention, Game of Thrones is very political like I said. So the politics do have to be there in some sort of way. It's a Game of Thrones video game after all, you know? There has to be some sort of Game of Thrones. And I think the video game franchise that comes closest to this formula is Assassin's Creed. And I'm not saying that because I made a dozen Assassin's Creed videos and it's my second favorite gaming franchise of all time and my last name happens to be Creed. What a coincidence, thank you God. But Assassin's Creed is very political, at least they used to be. You used to see like real life people, like real life historic figures like Benjamin Franklin who helped discover electricity, or George Washington, the creator of the iPhone. So Assassin's Creed games used to be political, and I think the Game of Thrones video game could work with that. And I would love for a Game of Thrones video game to have like cool moments like this.
But what do we have left once we abandon the lie? Chaos. A gaping pit waiting to swallow us all. Chaos isn't a pit. Chaos is a ladder.
That's something in itself. Those other Game of Thrones video games had some of the worst dialogue my ears have ever heard. I mean, just look at this.
I would have hated getting caught by a little like our friend here.
Hold your tongue, deserter.
That's not what your mother said last night.
Whoa, did he really just say your mom?
I mean, that dialogue is absolute crap. I mean, I don't even know what's worse, that dialogue or the dialogue from Game of Thrones Season 5.
You want a good girl, but you need the bad pussy.
Whenever you're ready, my lord.
But one thing that I'm conflicted on is the voice acting. If you didn't know, some of the Game of Thrones actors actually voice acted their own character in the earlier video games, which is one of the highlights of those games.
You two will join Croft and his men. Get them into the city, help them liberate Marine, and I will see that you are rewarded.
But that was when those actors were essentially only doing Game of Thrones and nothing else. Now a lot of them have families or are working on other projects like the Hunger Games, so I don't think they will return. However, a good counterpoint to this is the actor who plays Jon Snow, Kit Harington. He actually promoted the Game of Thrones mobile game. It's not really something he's passionate about, obviously. He only really just showed up for the trailer for the bag. And to be fair, it was really cool seeing Kit talk about Westeros in a positive way again, after Season 8.
Whatever it takes, through fire and blood.
You know nothing.
No, don't.
What?
Don't do it.
I was just gonna say.
Well, don't say it.
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
Do you know some things?
So hopefully he comes back, but I wouldn't bet on it. But speaking of mobile games, the article does say they will be making plenty of other Game of Thrones mobile games until this big new Game of Thrones project comes out. So I'll probably check those when they come out. And once I get a new phone, I'll actually check out the other mobile games as well that are already out. And make a video on those, and even the Xbox 360 Game of Thrones video games. I might try those out too. But yeah, that's it for this video. Like, subscribe, and peace.